Day. Back on a Thursday. Normally, I'm here on Tuesdays, but couldn't make it on the Tuesday this time. Dr. Maiysha, and those of you who know me know that I'm the founder of the Mind ReMapping Academy and a um, NLP coach and trainer of hypnosis and NLP and timeline therapy. You know, I've been thinking about this particular thing. We're talking about binary thinking today. I'm talking about the cost of either or. When I say binary thinking, I mean either or thinking, right? What do I mean? Like it's either this or it's that. Um, and there's a cost to that. And so I've been thinking about this topic for a while. And I find that's probably a good time to talk about it. But before I do that, I have to give you my disclaimer. So those of you who know me, those of you who follow me, you know I have a 7.5-year-old son. And guess what? School's out. So it may not be today, but it could be. You might get a chance to meet him on one of these journeys. Those of you who have been following me since the early days of the pandemic have gotten to meet him once or twice. And so I just want to let you know that while maybe unplanned, it would be a welcomed addition to the show. Uh, yeah, let's chat about this because this either or thinking. This is, I call it binary thinking, or it's called binary thinking. It's also called either or thinking. This is the I'm right, you're wrong. This is the pick a side. This is the it's this or either it's that. This is the he's bad, he's good. Like this is what binary thinking is. This is what either or is. Either it's this way or it's that way. And when we start to think about how things are built in our society, it's really this is one of the major things that um, one of the major foundations that we live in is very either or binary thinking, and there's a huge cost to that. Now you can look at your own life. I mean, you know me. If you follow me, you know that I like to talk about things on multiple levels. I like to talk about things from the standpoint of the individual application level. I like to talk about things a little bit more on the community level, and then I, like to chunk it up to the global level. So I'm going to be doing all three, right? So if you look at it really on from the personal side, when we use words like we use or think things like either or, it's very exclusive. It excludes possibilities. It excludes, um, it, you know, it narrows possibility, and so um, it can stifle our creativity. It can stifle our communication. It can stifle our listening when we're thinking in that either or capacity. And it really is a very unconscious thing that I hear and see people do on a regular basis, right? I can't leave, it's either I leave my job or I start a business, right? It's either I quit medicine or I stay in medicine. This is inside of the industry that I'm in. It's either we do it this way or we do it that way. And it robs us of the creativity of everything in between the either and the or. So you can see how it's exclusive. Um, when we're in communication with people, and especially if there's conflict, it's either my way or your way, right? There's that, and it really is it's a foundation for scarcity mentality. When we think about it, when you really think about either or thinking, it sets the foundation. It's sort of the gateway to scarcity mentality, because it's either I get some or you get some. It's either my way or it's your way. So what happens is when we engage in either or thinking, then there's this threat of loss if the other person is right or gets it or whatever the case may be, right? So there becomes this threat of loss when you engage in this either or thinking for long periods of time, and you live in this sort of scarcity environment, it's inside your head, and then it produces that scarcity behavior. And so there's no middle ground. There's no collaboration inside of either or thinking. We can't hear other sides. We can't hear the other side of the equation when we're engaged in either or thinking, because a lot of times, and you remember we had this conversation earlier last week, which was doubling down to be right. So what happens is, we're in this either or thinking, and there's no room for other views. There's no room for other, for creativity, for expansion, for growth. And then we're so attached to the rightness, we're so attached to and afraid of losing something, that we double down for that rightness. And sometimes even people die to be right, right? But the truth is that the complexities of life get missed inside of either or thinking. Let's take, for instance, and I haven't much talked about it, but I'm going to use an example, is the Oscar slap, Will Smith and Chris Rock. And initially, when it happened, of course, we heard all of this, someone's on this side, someone's team Chris Rock, someone's team Will Smith, people were picking sides. But what that did is it caused it blurred the complexity of the entire event, like what was really going on, that would have something like that happen, that would have Will Smith act outside of his character in that way. It missed the complexities of the entire event. And now, as time has gone on, there's been an unfolding of the complexities that muddies this: either it's this, or it's this. Either he's right or he's wrong. Either team Chris or team Will, right? And that's just an example of the complexities that gets missed when we engage in this either or thinking. This type of thinking is actually, it's a characteristic of dominant culture, right? I'm going to say it like that. I'll say it another way. In Tima Okum's, she has a website that talks about the characteristics or the symptoms of white supremacism culture. It's one of the symptoms or the characteristics of white supremacism culture: either or thinking. Now, when I said it's built into the foundation of our nation, of our world, of our history, that either or, I'm serious, right? And we talk about the inherited conversations we then inherit, and every generation beyond us inherits, that it's either this or that. And so how we begin to come out of that is, number one, notice when we're either oring, right? And then you get to put the and in, because the and allows for the possibility of other views. And when you begin to include the and, see, the either or is exclusive, the and is inclusive, right? You're calling in new possibilities, you're calling in other ways of thinking. Then you can begin to see solutions that you didn't see before when you call in the and, right? This either or thinking, on a real macro level, this is the type of thinking that has led to the intolerance that we experience. It leads to, because, well, one person is better than the other person. One person is superior, thus the other person must be inferior, right? This group is superior, therefore this group must be inferior, in theory, right? So that is the macro level. That is the big cost of this either or thinking that we've inherited, and that has been passed down. And that intolerance at extremes, well, you can see what that intolerance at its extreme can do. You can see it in the last week. You can see it, what the intolerance will do at its extremes. And that is based in either my way or your way. Either it's right or it's wrong. Either it's here or it's there. Either you're bad or you're good. Either you're superior or you're inferior. And that's like the global cost of this either or. And if you really look at where we are and all the things that are going on right now, you can find that thread of either or in all of it. And that's just one characteristic, right? That I can name. Where I can name paternalism. I can name, you know, uh, a bunch of things. You know, the defensiveness. I can name a whole bunch of things. And right now we're talking about either or, right? So when we begin to recognize the either or in our thinking, then we can interrupt that. Now, you know me, I'm all about interrupting unresourceful and unresourceful behavior and behavior that's not useful. Like that is what I teach. That is what I do. That is my jam. And interrupting either or, while it may not be easy, can be fairly simple by replacing the either or with an and. And you know, one of the things, even in conversation, when you say it, it sounds different, right? You can replace a but with an and. Oh, let's talk about that for just a moment. So the either or is exclusive. The but is also exclusive because when you say what you say and then you say but, you have just invalidated everything that you said before with the thing that you're about to say afterwards. I don't mean to sound this way, but I don't mean to invalidate you, but I'm not racist, but, right? You invalidate everything that came before that. So um, you want to begin to hear these things in yourself and other people, right? So a lot of times when I'm speaking with people and I hear them use the but, I just, gently nudge them with the and, right? Why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be and? Now I understand again that there are always complexities and exceptions to the rule. And so we will not, I'm not talking necessarily about the exceptions because I guess in some cases there needs to be an either or, right? And for the most part, we begin to call in with the and. That's in our own thinking. So let's talk about at the individual level once again. And our own thinking, when we call in the and, we start to see that there are other possibilities. When I would work with my clients, and they would say, well, I either have to do this or I have to do that. And I would say, well, why can't you do both? And it would open up a whole world that they never had thought about. Why can't you start a business while you're still working? And there's a way to do that. Oh, how would I do that? And that's how people make successful transitions from being in a career to being in a business, or who create multiple streams of revenue because they can engage in that and thinking, right? Or when you're in in communication or conversation with someone, and each of you has a view. Each of you has a view, and you know I speak about a lot respecting people's models of the world. If there are differing points of view, or if there is a point of view and you have a view and you don't necessarily disagree with the view, you can say yes and. Yes and. That's a thing that I think they use in improv, and it is very useful, right? Yes and. And what that does is that it affirms, yes, I hear you, because this is the long version of it, right? Yes, I hear you and I get what you're saying. I got the communication, and let me also communicate this. Let me also add this on, right? Because if when you're yes and you're truly in the space of yes and, then you can build on a conversation and actually come to a resolution if a resolution is to be found, right? And so, and sometimes it's yes, and why don't we put a pin in this and come back to it, right? And it still is avoiding the invalidation of others. Now, I'm talking about this in the individual, but this can apply, in leadership. This is that sort of elevated level of thinking in leadership. Yes, I hear you, and maybe let's put a pin in it. Or yes, and here's another idea. Because this is when we start to expand the possibilities and expand, the creativity and build these bridges that often are burned by the either or. And they can be burned on the personal level, and they can be burned on the business level, and they can be burned on the corporate level, and they can be burned on the global level, on the international level. We're seeing it every single day. So as go about your Thursday, so I can say your the rest of your week and your weekend and coming up on next week. Start to listen to how many times you hear yourself and the people in your life say or. And notice what happens when you just do that simple linguistic shift to and, or even in the thinking into the and. Look at the spaces where the and is happening in our world and where the or is happening. Look at the difference, right? I know I don't have all the answers, obviously. I never have claimed to. And what I do know is that this either or thinking it does ravage our lives. It sabotages our lives, and it is very destructive. It's destructive and it's stifling. We cannot be fully expressed, um, fully autonomous, fully free inside of either or thinking. And so think about that. Think about where you're either or thinking, where you're hearing either or thinking, how you can call in the and in conversations and what that does to the conversation. Even in conflict, even in challenging conversations in conflict, especially in conflict, right? Because in conflict, that's when we really start to have that fear of loss of something. Think about how the either or impacts our scarcity mentality. Think about that. And think about how when we start to call in the and, how we can call in that abundance thinking, how we can call in abundance, period, when we begin to think inside it with the and, right? Because when we have that abundance thinking, then there tends to be more tolerance for views other than our own, for circumstances other than our own. And then that that outreach, that calling in of people, that rising tide that lifts all boats, it can be made possible, right? We got a lot of work to do. We're far from it, y'all. We're far from it. But these are just the little things, the little nuggets. Sometimes it's the little changes, the little transformations that when you start to stack those little things on top of each other, they create big transformations. And that's the thing that I teach, in the work that I do, both with organizations and in my individual training programs, is how to use these little tools and stack these little tools on a very day-to-day basis to impact our lives, that has us and ripple out and impact other lives. And that ripple spreads and spreads and spreads and spreads until we have a big impact. And imagine if 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people are doing these ripples. Like, that's where it's at. There's got to be the systemic change, absolutely. But the system is run by people, I should say, and right? Haha, I caught myself. And the system is run by people, right? And so we while the systemic work is being done, we also need to be doing the work at the individual level to create those ripples to help to disrupt this ineffective system that we're living in, whether it's the individual system, the family unit system, the community system, the organizational, the national system, or the global system. All right. So with that, I'm going to put a pin in it. And you all know how to get in touch with me. If you're an organization out there and you want to get in touch with me, you're watching me on LinkedIn or Facebook, then you can message me directly. You can go to the website, mindremappingacademy.com. If you are interested if you're a therapist, a coach, a doctor, a healthcare professional, a leader, and you want to learn these tools of this system, these tools of language and deep work and being in trauma-informed communication, emotional intelligence and you want to come to one of the trainings, we have two coming up in the fall in September and November, then reach out and or you can schedule a call with me directly from the site. All right. You all have a wonderful rest of the day, a wonderful rest of the week. Stay safe out there. And, thoughts and prayers are not enough. We must take action. So, um, much love to you all, and I'll see you on the next one.